Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are here to bring you guys another episode review for last night's episode of Fear the Walking Dead, which was Season 2, Episode 12, entitled Pillar of Salt. Now, if you guys missed my predictions for this episode, make sure you check in the description below. I will leave a link down there to my prediction video that I posted back on Thursday for this episode. I made some predictions so you guys can go see if I was right about anything. And yeah, without further ado, I guess let's go ahead and get right into this. Now, as always, for episode reviews, they do include spoilers. So if you guys are not caught up to Season 2, Episode 12, Pillar of Salt, do not watch this video. It goes without saying. I've got some comments before saying that, you know, you spoiled this for me or whatever, and it's an episode review. It's as simple as that. And obviously this is not the actual episode either, which I've gotten hate about that. People saying that they expect to see the episode, even though it clearly says in the title and in the thumbnail that it is an episode review. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really know where you guys get the ideas from, but nonetheless, I just want to get that out of the way right now. So if you guys are here for the actual episode, this is not it. This is an episode review. This is me. If you guys don't want to see me, which I wouldn't really blame you, then click off the video. All right? All right, so let's get into things, guys. The episode actually starts off with a little tiny family from the Colonia, obviously where Nick is staying, basically leaving. They're sneaking out. They're trying to essentially get the heck out of there, you know, before things break down, before people come and try to hurt them, like the group at the food mart, because we get to find out that they actually haven't made their delivery of Oxy. So that obviously makes them mad, and this guy is realizing that, so he wants to go ahead and get himself out and his family, his daughter and his wife. He basically explains that they're not safe there anymore. It's not a safe place. They gotta go. So while they're exiting, they actually end up running into two of the people that are from the food mart. One of them is Marco. So Marco spots Francisco's family on the road, and basically Francisco tries to hide, but it's no use. Marco demands the Oxy, you know, that he's been promised by the Colonia, and he basically doesn't know anything about it, you know what I mean? He just said that he left the Colonia, that's it, we're leaving, we don't have anything to do with that place whatsoever anymore, and we know that the people from the food mart are out for their drugs. And the only reason they're not really kicking down the doors of the Colonia right now is because they do not know where it is. But ultimately they end up taking Francisco and his family with them back to the food mart to interrogate them a little later in the episode. The next scene that we get to see here is actually a pretty key scene. We get to finally find out that Ofelia is indeed alive. She actually is the one that took the truck from the group and ran off on her own. Now, if you guys watched the sneak peek for this episode, you would have already known that. Alright, so she was out on her own, she got out of the truck, she took a hammer out of her bag, and actually ended up killing an infected with it, while basically trying to loot a restaurant. You know, she's trying to loot a restaurant, trying to find some food and stuff like that. We also get to see some backstory from her character, including a proposal from a boyfriend named Will at an actual restaurant as well. So maybe she went to the restaurant to obviously reminisce about that. After she's done reminiscing about that, she actually goes ahead and siphons gas from a car to obviously get some gas back in her truck so she can continue down her path. We do get to see Ofelia a little later on in the episode, but this is pretty much it for her right now. Alright, so in the next scene, we get to see Madison's group essentially living a pretty good life at the hotel. They're getting used to everything. They're fishing off the pier. Alicia is taking surfing lessons, and both groups are essentially working really well hand in hand to get the hotel up and running. They have a generator going now. Madison helped out with that. They are fortifying the front gate. They are also building a new garden. And as I said, Alicia is taking surfing lessons from Hector and basically talks to him about Nick, her brother. And Hector reveals that his own brother is lost to him as well after falling in with a Tijuana gang. So this is where we first start to see the connection between the gang that Nick and his Colonia is currently dealing with and the hotel with, you know, Elena and Hector. Alright, so this is where we first get to see the connection, because that gang is connected to both groups. Small world, I guess, now that we have an apocalypse. We take back up with Nick now in his trailer with Luciana, and Reynaldo basically stops by to let them know that Francisco and his family left the Colonia. This is where Nick volunteers himself and Luciana to go ahead and deliver the Oxy so that they can get water for their group and to obviously get that gang off their backs. Now, in my prediction video last week, we got to see and predict that Strand was going to be hurt in some way. And we were right. we were 100% right. Now, I said in the prediction video that I don't think that it would be a bite wound because they wouldn't show something like that in the trailer. I thought that it would either be a knife wound, he got stabbed, or a gunshot wound, and he got stabbed. So, basically, in Elena's hotel room, Madison, Strand, Alicia, and Elena decide to run the generator for just a few hours a week, enough to make ice and boil water. Strand answers a knock at the door, and Eileen, the girl with the daughter that got married, face bitten off, and then essentially Strand killed the zombie version of her in last week's episode. She stabbed him. As soon as he opened the door, she stabbed him, saying, "You took my daughter from me," and then she ran away. All right, so she still thinks that this dead version of her daughter, the Walker version of her daughter, was still somehow her daughter. Now, at some points, I sort of get it. You know what I mean? I understand grief, right? But at the same time, just like Strand said a little later on, he understands grief, but this was a little excessive. So Strand gets stabbed, he falls to the floor, calls for Madison for help, and they essentially get him up onto a bed and start the work on him. Essentially, that leads to them actually having to go to the food mart, with Elena's brother and Hector's brother also being there. That's how they obviously knew about that food mart. They go to the food mart to get supplies to fix Strand, right? So that's how that connection essentially happens. Strand gets stabbed. We get to see Nick and Luciana briefly in a scene tell Alejandro that Francisco actually went ahead and left the Colonia. And Alejandro basically says bitterly, no thank you, no goodbye. And he basically asked Luciana to speak with the scouts to boost morale in the wake of Francisco's departure. Now, this next line from Madison is what we actually get to see in the promo as well. I hit on it in my predictions video, which again, link will be down in the description below. She basically tells Oscar that Eileen, obviously his mother, must remain locked up indefinitely. Now, if you guys don't know what indefinitely means, it doesn't mean forever. It just means until a time that they feel comfortable letting her out. There's no time limit. She doesn't serve a 90-day sentence. She's not going to be just locked up there forever. She's going to be locked up until they decide that it's safe. That's what indefinitely means. And she also declares that going forward, anyone who harms anyone else at the hotel will be banished. I believe the quote was, anyone who raises a hand to anyone else is done. Gone, I guess. Whatever. In the next scene here, Alejandro addresses his people at the church and urges them to keep their faith in him and in the safety of their home, the Colonia. Afterwards, he questions Luciana's loyalty for neglecting to speak with the scouts immediately. He forbids her and Nick from doing the drug trade, basically saying that no one is going to be leaving the Colonia, and Nick fears that Marco will come for them if he doesn't receive his oxy. Which he's damn right. After that, we get to see Madison, Elena, and Oscar get into a van and drive to the supermarket that is run by the narcos. Obviously, that being the exact same gang that Nick is trying to deal with right now with the oxy. On the road now, Elena explains that Hector's brother Antonio lives with the narcos, and she says that Hector has never really forgiven Antonio for choosing the gang over his own family. Back in Nick's trailer now, Luciana worries about Alejandro's mental state. Nick insists that they make the drug deal anyway, despite Alejandro's word, I guess, saying that no one should leave the community. Nick knows that it's a bad idea to go too long without water. You know what I mean? They don't have water, they don't have oxy, so they eventually will come for them. And Alejandro brings up a good point, saying they don't know where we are. Yeah, we get that. But there's only so many places you could be. And it's just a matter of time until he finds you. Ultimately, Nick here is trying to save the community. He's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to care about people. He's trying to help people out. Luciana, though, refuses to disobey Alejandro, saying that she trusts him and she has complete faith in him. Madison, Elena, and Oscar now arrive with a cooler at that supermarket, and Elena tells the guards that she has something for Antonio. They allow Madison and Elena to enter while Oscar stays outside. They didn't let him enter for some reason. I don't know why, but maybe they just have something against guys. Who knows? Nick again urges Alejandro to make the drug trade. Alejandro refuses and accuses Nick of lacking faith in him. Madison and Elena are now inside of the supermarket, and they give Antonio a cooler full of fish and ice. And they basically request the medicine, for Strand to get him healthy and back up on his feet. I believe the medicine that they were actually getting for Strand was essentially to suture his wound up and to replace or revitalize the red blood cell count, if I remember correctly. Obviously all the blood that he lost getting stabbed, he obviously needs to rejuvenate that somehow. And I guess the medicine is the best way without an actual blood transfusion. And they might not know, the actual blood type of him, or else maybe they would do a transfusion. Antonio asks now if they can provide more ice because the fish is good, but apparently the ice is better, and Elena agrees. Antonio tells them to wait, and meanwhile they hear Marco yelling in an upstairs office. Upstairs now, Marco interrogates his captives, which, ironically enough, was Francisco and Anna, obviously his family. So again, small world. Members of the Colonia that Nick is currently staying at are pretty much right next to Madison. And they're questioning them about the location of the Colonia. Francisco assures Marco that someone will deliver the oxy very soon. Madison and Elena overhear Marco's interrogation, and Madison now asks Elena to translate for her and runs upstairs when Marco describes or mentions an American with ratty hair who delivered drugs to them. So basically, Madison has gotten in her head that it's Nick. Obviously the Colonia is not too far off. It's probably Nick. It has something to do with drugs. He knows a thing or two about drugs. It has to be Nick. And she's assuming correctly. She just doesn't know it. You know what I mean? She's taking a big risk by going up there and asking him about it. But with that being said, ultimately it is Nick. So, keep working at it, I guess. So she barges into the office and demands the name of the ratty-haired boy. Francisco forbids Anna from answering, and Marco orders them out. Antonio now gives them the medicine and tells them to stay away, saying that they won't be at the supermarket for much longer. So where the heck are they going? Where are they planning on going? In the Colonia now, Nick asks Ronaldo to help him make the drug trade. Ronaldo agrees to accompany Nick that night because essentially Luciana won't go with him, so he needs somebody to go with him and get his back. Luciana now talks to scouts outside of Nick's trailer, and she notices a look on Nick's face. And he basically insists that nothing is wrong. Basically what's wrong here with Nick is essentially going behind her back, and he sort of knows that and doesn't really know whether or not to tell her, keep that from her because he does like her. He does care about her. And I think that he just feels guilty ultimately. All right, so at the hotel now, we get to see Alicia and Strand bonding here, which was pretty cool. She basically is taking care of Strand, puts a blanket over him and compresses his wound. She explains that she helped Nick through his detox withdrawals and says that Madison, still doesn't fully see her. Basically explaining to Strand that she has essentially taken care of herself her whole life. And she's never been the one to really get the attention that a child, a kid deserves. It's always sort of been Nick, because he's always had so many problems. She's always been really easygoing, really good grades in school. Madison never really had to worry about her too much. And essentially she's just sad that Madison didn't really notice her too much back then and didn't really take care of her, too much because she could take care of herself. But now that Nick's gone, it seems like Madison is still worrying about Nick more than her child that is, not leaving, sticking with her at all times, through thick and thin. And she still feels like she's not really being noticed too much, which, yeah, I mean, that would suck. That would definitely get you down, I'll tell you that much. So she suggests that Madison still doesn't fully see her, and Strand basically replies with, then make her. Back at the Colonia now, Nick surveys the area from a rooftop of the Colonia, and Marco, who is staked out nearby, spots Nick through binoculars. So Marco and his group at the food mart now have seen Nick on top of a rooftop, and that means they now know where the Colonia is. Not good. Not good at all. Back with Ofelia for the second time, I guess, in the episode. She studies a map in her truck, and she looks at her rosary beads. Now in a flashback, again, Ofelia talks to her mother, Griselda. We get to see her come back. She's obviously dead and gone. About their family, and Griselda explains that she and Daniel left El Salvador to shelter Ofelia from the violence and bloodshed, and vows to do anything for Ofelia and Daniel. And she says, quote unquote, that is love, is what she says. And Ofelia takes her hand, choosing her family over Will. So that means she essentially chose to stay with her family in America than going to Mexico with Will and accepting that proposal, right? That she had earlier on in the episode in the other flashback. That's just confusing. Back in the present now, Ofelia kisses the rosary beads and hangs them on her rearview mirror, and she drives towards the United States. So she's essentially leaving Mexico again to go back to the U.S. to be where her family, I guess, once was. You know, she is basically taking that flashback, to heart, saying that they wanted to get out of El Salvador, obviously that's in Mexico, and, go to the United States to seek shelter for Ofelia. And Ofelia is essentially doing the exact same thing right now. She thinks that just Mexico is just a horrible place, even in the apocalypse, and she wants to get out of there just like her family did. Alright, so with Madison, Elena, and Oscar returning to the hotel after dark, Madison runs upstairs very, very quickly to the generator and turns it on, lighting up the hotel sign in the hopes of sending a signal to Nick. Alicia runs up to Madison and warns her that people will see the sign from all around and accuses Madison of thinking more about Nick than her, even though Nick chose to run away. She's never really decided against her. She's always wanted to stay with her mother, and even when Nick has chosen what's out there over us, you still care about him more. So that quote right there really gets to Madison and makes her think, I guess, a little bit. So Alicia did exactly what Strand told her to do, and that was make her see her. So Madison ultimately turns off the generator, a big bright red sign, the hotel sign on top of the hotel. It was pitch black out, so that red hotel sign could be seen from miles away. It was only on for a moment, but you have to think that somebody seen that in pitch black darkness in the middle of the night. It had to be seen, and it sure enough was. Now, we don't know if it was seen by Nick, but it sure as heck was seen by Travis. He's standing in the hills overlooking the Rosarito Beach Hotel and spots the hotel's neon sign just as it turns off. And within this scene, the first time we get to see Travis in this episode, we don't get to see his son Chris here. What happened to Chris? We have no idea. But I am sure as heck eager to find out. And that's exactly what I think next week's episode is mainly going to be about. Because so far with the promo and some of the sneak peeks that I've seen, it's about Chris and Travis again, picking up where we left off the last time we saw them, with Chris obviously killing the farmer inside of the barn. But like I said, in this current scene, we do not see Chris anywhere near Travis whatsoever. So we can assume that he's one of three things right now, right? He's just flat out dead. Maybe he got turned into a zombie. Or maybe he ran off with those other teenage boys or guys. I don't know, whatever you want to call them, but maybe he ran off with them. He fits in better with that group. He's finally killed somebody and Travis can't take it anymore. He has to leave him ultimately. Now, I don't necessarily believe that he would 100% just leave him, but at the same time, he could ultimately give Chris a choice. You either come with me or you go off on your own, because you're clearly a man now. You've made that man's decision to take somebody else's life. I can't stay with you after that. I can't stay with these guys because this is what you've turned into. So you either go with them or you come with me. And judging by what we see in this scene, we can assume that Chris went with them. Anyways, that brings us to the end of the episode. It was a very action-packed episode. I loved every single second of it. It was a really good one, guys. I definitely recommend you watch it if you guys haven't already. And if you guys haven't, then I don't know why you watched this episode review. You just got spoiled, like, really badly. But nonetheless, that was Season 2, Episode 12, entitled Pillar of Salt. Now, apparently, we only have 2 weeks left of Fear the Walking Dead. Now, according to everything that I've heard about, we're supposed to have 15 episodes in Season 2. Right now, that was Episode 12. The upcoming one is going to be Episode 13. So, that means 13 and 14. I'm thinking that either there's going to be only 14 episodes instead of 15 for some reason, or they're going to put 14 and 15 into a 2-hour season finale. Now, that could be a very big possibility. I ultimately don't have a single clue, but it's going to be pretty cool if it's a 2-hour season finale. It has to be pretty action-packed in order for them to make a 2-hour season finale and keep those viewers, intrigued enough for them to keep watching for that whole 2 hours. So again, that is the end of the episode. This was Season 2, Episode 12, entitled Pillar of Salt. Thank you all so much for watching the episode review. If you guys liked it and enjoyed it as much as I did, make sure you let me know in the comment section below, or by hitting the video up with a like, a subscription. It does not matter, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. If you guys like gaming content, I am primarily a gaming channel, so make sure you guys check out my other content. It would definitely help me out a lot, and it just would be awesome. I put a lot of work and effort into every single video that I put out, and for you guys to check that out, it would be great. But if you guys don't like gaming content, make sure you tune back in on Thursday for my episode predictions for this week's up-and-coming episode of Fear the Walking Dead, which would be Season 2, Episode 13, entitled Date of Death. I will see you guys then. Take care, everybody. Goodbye. Today we are here to talk about quite possibly the best pulse rifle in Destiny right now that you can get your hands on. Now, of course, I think that you can get better ones like out of rolls and stuff like that, but this is the best one that you can buy. So if you have an allegiance with Future War Cult, you can get this pulse rifle right now.